It's hanging half 100 on them at Owen Field. Or the run rules on the diamond at Loves Field. We're giving you the breakdowns, the bets, and the hot takes from the perspective of two former OU Athletics employees. You're listening to the Mainline Podcast with Tyler Burton and Adam Jaquez.
Let's go! Let's go! Go!
Let's go. Welcome to the Mainline, Season 5, Episode 16, talking about the improbable win against Alabama this past Saturday, looking ahead to Death Valley and the matchup against LSU and everything else for the future for the Oklahoma Sooners. I'm Adam Jaquez. He's Tyler Burton. Tyler, how are we feeling this evening?
Adam, I'm entirely too emotionally invested in this program and what this football team does in the fall. And what happened on Saturday night in Norman, Oklahoma, I needed that. After the hell that this season has put us through, being 5-5 on the verge of the worst season in my lifetime that I can remember, for the sanctity of my mental health and well-being, I needed that type of win. So I wish I could have been there in person like you to take it all in, but boy, was it awesome to watch that unfold from the couch.
Yeah, I'm just kind of flabbergasted at it because it's in no way did any of us see that playing out in that manner. No. We talked about a week ago, hey, it doesn't matter who starts at quarterback. No, it doesn't. Like we thought maybe there was a chance Oklahoma could kind of keep it relatively close, but in no way did we think that, Oklahoma's going to go out and dominate, and it really wouldn't be a close matchup at all. It kind of left you wondering, like, where has that game plan been all season? Because I think we've known about this team's limitations since that Tennessee game, and we still hadn't really employed that particular game plan, but it ended up working out for Oklahoma. I think maybe a good place to start is at the quarterback position because I mentioned a moment ago, we were kind of like, who cares who plays? It doesn't really matter. But Brent Venables stuck with Jackson Arnold when a lot of people said he's worthless. It's not worth putting him out there. He's a waste of snaps. You need to develop someone that's going to be younger that is more likely to be at Oklahoma in future years. But Jackson Arnold goes out there and through the air, takes care of the ball, high completion percentage. John Finley, I think, put him in really good positions. Finally put him in good positions to not, put the game on his shoulders from a throwing perspective, but from a running perspective, highly effective, over 130 yards rushing. Just really a different game plan than what we've seen in the past, and highly effective. A guy that really just bounced back after a disastrous Missouri outing.
Adam, it's kind of crazy. If you would have told me that before the game, Jackson Arnold was going to throw for less yards against Alabama than he did against Missouri, he was only going to complete 2 passes to a wide receiver, and somehow Oklahoma was going to win the game by 3 touchdowns. And honestly, it could have been a lot worse than that. I think 24-3 was about as close as it possibly could have been. Oklahoma definitely left some points out there. They could have been in the high 30s. So, but yeah, you got to give a lot of credit to Jackson Arnold. I put it in the group chat right after the game. This was a great win. Not only that the fan base needed, that this program needed. It was a great win for Brent Venables. He deserves this for all that he's gone through over the last few years on and off the field. But then this was also a moment that Jackson Arnold deserved. Again, rightfully so. There's been times throughout this season where, he hasn't lived up to the standard of what it takes to play quarterback at a high level at the University of Oklahoma. And, he's taken some backlash, some of it rightfully, deserved, some of it maybe not so, but, he came out, he used a bye week to, work with Kevin Johns and work with John Finley. They put together a really good game plan. And I thought that Jackson came out and, it's amazing how different it looks offensively when you don't turn the football over. When you actually take care of the football, you manage the game well, you pick up some really nice, yards with your legs. I thought that it was a phenomenal performance by Jackson Arnold. It's just a matter of now with LSU coming up this weekend and ultimately with the bowl game, is that a game plan that you can replicate? Are you going to be able to go into Death Valley only being able to, throw for 60 to 70 yards through the air? I don't think that's necessarily a good recipe, but at the same time, if Oklahoma's defense plays in Baton Rouge like they did in Norman just a few days ago, there's no telling what could possibly happen. But super happy for Jackson. It was good to see, great moment for him. And super excited about what he's going to be able to do for these next couple of games, and super excited to see what number 21 on offense, Toting the Rock, is going to be able to do for the last couple of games of this year. Xavier Robinson, welcome, coming out party. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, phenomenal outing from Xavier Robinson, and I feel like as a collective, as a fan base, like we knew he could do that based on what we had seen the 2 weeks prior. So it was like, okay, finally, like they give him the ball. And I think Brent said earlier in his press conference today, he kind of jokingly said, "Hey, DeMarco, where has this guy been?" Some people are saying, "Oh yeah, the coaching staff needs to know these players better and should have gotten him opportunities earlier in the season." Some people say, well, he wasn't ready early in the season. Now he is. I don't know, but I'm just glad that we have him at this point and that he's effective.
Yeah.
And he's the type of guy that honestly, he, in a weird way, he kind of looks small out on the field, which tells me he has lost a lot of weight. He's been working on his body, but when he builds it back with pure muscle, that dude's going to be just unstoppable. He's a force of nature right now as a true freshman, and he was excellent. And the offensive line that was blocking for him as well, major strides forward this week. We kind of had thought, I was walking to the stadium thinking, okay, we're coming off a bye week, like just throughout this year, like who's gotten better, and does a bye week even matter? Because typically it does. You come out of bye week refreshed, able to have repped a lot more things differently. We hadn't seen that all year for this team. And it did finally matter, I think. And especially with that offensive line, knowing where they were going, getting a hat on a hat, they just looked significantly better.
It's amazing what happens when you have the same starting offensive line group for consecutive. You're able to build that continuity. These guys are able to gel together, get those reps, not just in the week of practice, but, being able to stack weeks on weeks and, get those valuable game reps as well. And I think that's been something, we've been extremely critical of Bill Beanbo in that offensive line group this year. But I think that when you look at this group as a whole, the uptick in production and how much better they've gotten over the last month of the season, particularly on the left side of the offensive line, Heath Ozeda, Logan Howland, two freshmen that, we didn't really think we're going to factor into the offensive line this year. And, you watch them play on Saturday night, they bullied Alabama for the better part of 4 quarters. I mean, those are going to be NFL type guys on the defensive line for Alabama, and Howland and Ozeda. I mean, they just absolutely bullied those guys and kicked their ass for 4 quarters. So that's what we've, grown accustomed to seeing from Bill Beanbo in his time in Norman and Oklahoma, being able to take guys, develop them, coach them up, getting to be able to progress throughout the season and play their best football. And, we talk about how pivotal it was that Oklahoma was able to get bowl eligible. That's 15 more practices that those young guys are going to be able to have now to continue to work, to continue to grow and develop with Coach Bill Beanbo. And that's something that I think is going to pay huge dividends. But yeah, the fact that Oklahoma, I think that Brent brought up the statistic in his press conference earlier. I think the first 7 games of the season, Oklahoma was barely able to average over 100 rushing yards. And here over the last 4 weeks, they're the better part of 225 yards. So you can chalk that up to offensive line progression. You can chalk that up to a change in offensive coordinator, maybe the emergence of Xavier Robinson. But again, Oklahoma is they're continuing to push the right buttons, and it's nice to see this team play complementary football for a full game. And it's amazing what it looks like when that comes to light.
Yeah. I've been kind of a broken record. I think I say this almost every week now, but internal development along the offensive line was Oklahoma's best path forward to finding success in the future. Simply because the portal is, I think, very unreliable, especially at the offensive line position, because you look back at last year's transfer portal rankings, the top 5 offensive linemen, I think from a year ago, most of them are not really doing much at their current schools, or maybe are just barely average starters. So you can't rely on that. And this was a really good game that, okay, we have some dudes I think that we can look to the future, and we can go, okay, yeah, like that can piece together, that can come together, especially that left side of the offensive line, like you point out. I think there's a lot to be very hopeful about. And that really goes across the entire program and team right now, because the way things were trending, OU was not, on track to make a bowl game prior to this matchup. Now we are. I don't know if we'll go beat LSU. I don't know if we'll go win a bowl game necessarily, but regardless of what you have happen there, you have this win that's very late in the season, very high profile, primetime ABC game of the week. And I think you have something to hang your hat on, as far as recruiting goes, as far as what you do in the portal, all your off-season practices, winter workouts, spring practice, going into, next year's opener, I believe is on the road at Temple. So going into that game now, I feel like you have some momentum and you have some hope that you otherwise wouldn't have had, which I think is incredibly important, because let's face it, whether you like Brent, wanted Brent fired, he wasn't going anywhere. Now you have some of that upward trajectory and momentum to at least give him a chance to get the right players in, whether that be high school for Brent or for a future coach. You just needed that momentum from a program perspective, and this game absolutely delivered that.
Well, it's amazing what a difference the outlook of the program is in the span of 24 hours. Going into the Alabama game, I pitched Oklahoma was going to lose by multiple touchdowns. We were going to get shut out. We were on our way to a 5-7 season where, maybe we're having the conversation about how, we need to be looking at a head coaching hire going into 2025, not just an OC. But I think that this does, even though it doesn't fix and, completely get rid of the sour taste that this 2024 season has left us with, because at the end of the day, this has been a failure of a season 2024. Now, we can chalk it up to the different injuries, Brent not hiring the right coordinator, Seth Luttrell not being the guy. But at the end of the day, I do think that Saturday night, watching Oklahoma dismantle Alabama the way that they did, that was really the vision. And I think the first time, really in the last 3 years, outside of maybe the Texas game when Dylan Gabriel, led that comeback win, but that was the picture that Brent Venables wanted to paint when he took the head coaching job at Oklahoma. That tough, relentless, suffocating defense, dominating on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football, essentially making the other team, quit. And that's something that Brent Venables has done. And I thought that I can't remember who it was. It might have been Eddie on the Scoop postgame podcast, but the best college football teams throughout history, they take on the identity and the personality of their coach. And if you know anything about Brent Venables, you would say that he's a fighter. He's tough. He's relentless. He's determined. He's going to do anything and everything in his power to win a football game and build a program the right way. If you're in a foxhole with somebody and you're fighting for your life, you want to be in there with Brent Venables and that type of guy. And I think that that's what we're seeing from this football team as the year has gone on, because really, Adam, this team really didn't have anything to play for. You blow the game in the final minutes at Missouri, knowing that you've got Alabama and LSU coming up. There was all the opportunity in the world for everybody to simply say this season is over with. We're not playing for anything special. Let's fast forward to the coaching hire. Let's go ahead and lick our wounds. Let's get to 2025. And, give a huge amount of credit to the senior class. And, Ethan Downs, Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, Woody Washington, Jalil Farouk, and so many other guys. It's the leadership on this football team. It's, that are player driven. And, they were able to essentially help get this football team up off the mat and, get into that right mindset where they went in there. And it's kind of crazy to say because of how this year's gone, but they kicked Alabama's ass for 4 straight quarters. It wasn't a fluke like the Auburn game where they, gift wrapped it to Oklahoma. Oklahoma went out there and took it from the opening kickoff. So that was good to see. And, I'm probably the happiest, not just for Brent with what all he's had to battle. And, that was a phenomenal moment for him on Saturday night in the middle of the crowd with Holly Rowe, with his daughter celebrating that. But I'm the happiest for Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman. Those are 2 guys that could be playing on Sundays right now. They made the decision to come back for one final year, leading this program into the SEC. It hasn't been what any of us have expected, but they continue to fight, continue to battle, continue to lead from the front. And here we are in a matter of about 24 hours. The mood has shifted slightly here at the University of Oklahoma. So huge shout out to those 2 guys. And to kind of tie it all around back to you, Adam, you talked about it. The freshmen, Jaden Jackson, David Stone, Eli Bowen, Logan Howland, Heath Ozeda, who I know has been on campus for, more than a year, but, he's brand new to the fold as well. Your left side of the offensive line, outlook on that is looking pretty good with how these guys have continued to progress over the last month of the season. They're going to be even better going into next year. So even though you are going to be losing a few pieces on the defensive side of the football because of how well this coaching staff has recruited and how well they've continued to develop, there's a very realistic chance that Oklahoma, even despite losing Billy Bowman and Des Malone and Kenai Walker, they could possibly have one of the premier secondaries in the country next year, because you're going to have Eli Bowen on one side, Gentry Williams on the other, and that's a hell of a tandem to be able to throw out there at the cornerback position for this football team. So again, I'm very excited. It doesn't completely, cure what's been a pretty disappointing year, but vibes are definitely at an all-time high for this season going into LSU week.
Yeah, and you point out all the freshmen that are contributing, a lot of those on defense, like Bowen and Jackson.
Xavier Robinson.
I think David Stone is really showing out too as of late too. So I think he will have a very large presence in the 2025 season. So I think there's a lot of excitement around that. But I think you also look at and go, okay, we finally got an offensive game plan that was complementary to the defense. And it kind of confirmed what a lot of us really thought, was that this defense is actually better than what we've seen. Brent called out heading into this game that Oklahoma has defended more possessions than anyone else in the entire country. That got limited quite a bit against Alabama because the offense was holding onto the ball. They were coming out of the huddle slow. They were getting to the line slow. They were snapping the ball late in the play clock. They were keeping the ball on the ground, running it. That was the best middle eight that Oklahoma's played all year long, taking the air out of the football in the first half, about 5-minute drive there, doing the same thing to start the second half with the interception by Eli Bowen, capping that off with a touchdown. And then to end the game, 6.5-minute drive that just completely ended it there. It was absolutely phenomenal football from the offense that tremendously helped this defense, because it put them in a position throughout most of the second half where, we've seen really good first halves from this Oklahoma defense. And then as the second half goes on, it kind of starts to deteriorate a little bit. Well, Alabama was a team that had to be one-dimensional in the second half, and that tremendously changed things. We saw all the interceptions in the second half. We started to see a sack by R. Mason Thomas and a lot of pressure from the rest of the defensive end group in that second half. So it just confirmed that this defense is, I think, a lot better than what we see statistically, and they have a really high ceiling going into next year with a more complementary offense on a regular basis.
Adam, one of the things that really kind of sparked this interest, I did a little bit of research here, and, huge credit to Brent Venables providing this stat earlier today. But yesterday, when the Butkus finalists were announced, and there was this big thing on Twitter, regarding Danny Stutzman being a finalist, but Anthony Hill at Texas wasn't one. And then everybody starts bringing up the stats, and they start, looking at tackles and TFLs and sacks and all that. And, I think one of the biggest things right now is Oklahoma statistically is a top 15 to 20 defense in the country. Texas is probably top 5 to 10. But you go back and you look at it, Oklahoma this year, that defense has faced 5 of the top 17 offenses in college football right now. Wow. And for any and all Texas listeners that are out there, it's not even close what Oklahoma's defense and what Danny Stutzman has faced this year compared to Texas. So, but again, give credit where credit's due, phenomenal player. But yeah, you go back and you look at some of those statistics, facing 5 of the top 17 offenses of the country. Oklahoma's the only team in college football that has played 7 teams currently ranked in the top 25. So it doesn't help ease the pain of a 6-5 type season. But when you combine who's been on Oklahoma's schedule, you combine that with the injuries, the failure making an offensive coordinator hire that simply didn't pan out, the quarterback, carousel going back and forth between a couple of these guys. I mean, it does kind of make sense why Oklahoma sits in this position that they're in right now. And if they can just, Adam, I don't want to, be too positive here, but if they can get this offensive coordinator hire right and maybe bring in a couple of pieces, bring in a tight end, maybe bring in a couple of offensive linemen to combine that with what they've got coming back at the skill position, and what's going to be a pretty damn good defense going into next year as well, you might have something going into 2025. But again, that remains to be seen. We're focused on LSU right now. We'll see if we can't get this thing to 7-5. But Adam, particularly with the defense, and then we can kind of fast forward to what we want to see in Baton Rouge. But when you look at what Zach Alley's done, and that's Broyles Award nominated defensive coordinator Zach Alley as of today.
Huge honor.
Is this what did you expect us to be at this point right now? And obviously, again, this is a defensive-driven football team. But are you surprised that here we are 11 games into the season and the defense has just simply refused to quit, and they've been able to climb back up off the mat multiple times, knowing, for a huge majority of the season that the offense, as incompetent as they've been, as many bad positions as they put this defense in, they continue to go out there and ball.
Yeah, and I think that's a trend from Brent Venables' tenure, because you look back to the 2022 season, it was kind of the opposite. The defense was terrible, but the offense kept chugging. They weren't spectacular, but they didn't give up. And so now that's been flipped a little bit this year. So I think there's a lot of really high character guys like Ethan Downs, Billy Bowman, Danny Stutzman that are keeping the standard at an extremely high level. So I didn't expect any quit in them going into this game. I still think there's a lot of areas for improvement on the defense, particularly a more consistent pass rush that's not just, hey, obvious passing situations. But overall, I'm really pleased with where they are and the trajectory that they continue to be on, especially with Zach Alley at the helm. He's being nominated there. I'm sure he's on a track to become a head coach at some point someday. So, and that would be fantastic news for Oklahoma. If he's viewed that way, he goes off and coaches at, I don't know, TCU or something like that, and is highly successful. That's what you want. You want that guy to go out there, be successful somewhere else, because someday Brent Venables won't be the coach of Oklahoma anymore. He'll retire or get fired, or who knows what happens, but you'll want a network out there of guys like Zach Alley that are being successful somewhere. So, so yeah, I'm really happy. I'm really pleased with just the overall defensive performance and everything that, that culminated into the best outing that we've, I think, seen from the Brent Venables era on that side of the ball.
Well, that brings us to this upcoming weekend's matchup.
I want to ask you one question before we talk about LSU.
Go ahead.
The field storming, a little controversial. Some people say don't be a thief of joy. Some people say we're blue blood, we shouldn't do that. Here's my thoughts on it. I don't like that we did it, but I had fun. I didn't go down the field. I didn't go down the field. I stayed in the stands. It was fun. I enjoyed the moment. And I do view it a little bit old school because I know that bless our students, they've never seen the end of an OU football game. They're never in the stands, so they didn't know how to act at the end of the game. But my view on it is like it is reserved for the very extremely rare moments where, you are an extreme underdog. You beat, a top 5 type of team. You ruin their season. You had, no chance of winning. And I guess you could say that kind of is how that game played out. But Oklahoma as a brand is very proud. And I felt like, in a way, I know the people that rush the field and the people that love the field stormers because it's an epidemic in college sports. It happens, multiple times a week at this point. I think it's become something that doesn't mean that anymore. So my view on it is a little bit different in that manner. But I guess, yeah, you're taking out a year of frustration and celebrating that. And I'm all for that. But I don't want Oklahoma's standard lowered. And I feel like that's something that it feels like the standard is lowered too. And we're glad our year got a little bit better. If that makes sense. But again, I had fun. It was a fun thing to do.
I see your point, and I will agree with you that at a place like the University of Oklahoma, where you've got the tradition of winning, tradition of excellence, championships, Heisman trophies, the standard at Oklahoma, it should never be a common thing that you rush the field when you beat an opponent. I don't care if they're the number 1 team in the country. I don't care if they're the defending national champs. I don't care if I don't care if it's Alabama. I don't think that that's something that should, be the new norm. But here's what I will say. And I led the show off with this. This has been one of the most emotional roller coaster up and down seasons of my lifetime. And I think that when you combine the 5-5, the 5-5 record, the heartbreaking losses to Missouri, getting your ass kicked at the Cotton Bowl, getting your ass kicked on your home field by South Carolina, you combine that with what Brent Venables has been dealing with, what he's been trying to build here at Oklahoma, with what his wife Julie is going through, the senior class, Danny and Billy, Ethan, and all those guys. I thought that it was fine. I thought that it was an awesome moment. We'll look back on that 20 years from now, just like we did, in 2000, after the Nebraska game. It's not going to be something that happens all the time. But again, I picked this team to get beat by 30. I didn't think that there was any chance that we were going to go out there and make this game competitive, much less, beat Alabama by 3 touchdowns. So I thought that for the moment and how the game played out, I thought that it was a fitting end to what was a fantastic night in Norman, Oklahoma.
So to summarize, if you hated the field storming, we agree with you. If you love the field storming, we also agree with you. So
I don't want to see it happen anytime that Oklahoma plays a top 10 team. Do not rush the field. No, sure. We're better than that. But from everything that this program has been through the last couple of seasons, particularly this year, I didn't have any problem with it. And again, the students, I'm not sure how well versed or how knowledgeable the students are in thinking that that's something that is unacceptable at the University of Oklahoma. But yeah, I didn't have any problem with it. I thought it was awesome. I loved all the videos and content that came out from it. Danny with the Logies hat out there in the middle of the field. I mean, that's epic stuff. I mean, that's the stuff that legends are made of. And again, I thought that it was a lot of fun. I had friends and family that were out there on the field as well. So it was good that the fan base was almost able to kind of exhale and kind of release, all the demons and frustration that has built up over the last 3 months.
Yeah. So we're going to talk best bets here in a moment, our competition getting very, very close. We're going to talk about an announcement about the mainline show itself. At the end of the show, we're going to talk through our score predictions for the LSU game. But before we get to that, let's talk about LSU a little bit here. Oklahoma had a great game plan against Alabama. Can you really run that out, though, where it's basically run, not very much pass? Do you think Oklahoma can be successful with that against the Tigers?
I mean, if Oklahoma can dominate the line of scrimmage the way that they did on both sides of the football against Alabama, I think Oklahoma will have a chance to do that. And, ultimately you would want to see Oklahoma build on the performance from a week ago, running the football, playing turnover free, complementary football, limiting the big plays down the field from Garrett Nussmeier and that Tigers receiving core. and like I said, dominate the line of scrimmage. But I mean, when you talk about home field advantage in some of the toughest places in all of college football to play, going on the road to Death Valley at night is by far and away, I think, the toughest place that you can go as an opposing team. I think that they've won 23 out of the last 25 night games in Death Valley, and that includes SEC play. That we're talking Georgia, we're talking Ole Miss, Alabama, A&M, the big boys coming in there. So it's a tough place to play. You look at what LSU does offensively. The SEC play, they're averaging only 21.5 points per game. That's only good for 11th in the SEC. They've actually got the worst rushing offense in the SEC by far, averaging just a hair over 115 yards per game. Everybody knows about Caden Durham, the recruiting story between him and LSU. Going into last season, Josh Williams, the backup running back, he had a fantastic performance against Vanderbilt a week ago. But Adam, it's something that I thought was pretty interesting. LSU has only had one rusher go over 100 yards in a conference game this year, and that was Caden Durham with 101 yards against Arkansas. So again, it starts with stopping the run game. Oklahoma's front seven has been proven that they can do that against anybody in America so far this year. So really this game for me defensively for Oklahoma, it comes down to Oklahoma's secondary and their ability to defend this downfield passing attack that LSU is going to deploy. Garrett Nussmeier, second best passing offense in the SEC, 63%, over close to 3,500 yards, and he's only been sacked 14 times. That's the best in the SEC for an offensive line of pass protection. So you just talked about it, Adam, how you still want to see Oklahoma continue to get better in terms of generating a pass rush without having to bring 5-6 guys at a time. So this is going to be a big test for them. They got a couple of good weapons out there on the perimeter, and Lacey and Anderson. The tight end is probably the best tight end in the SEC right now, in Mason Taylor. So this is going to be a really, really big test for Oklahoma's defense on Saturday night. We'll see how they can bounce back after the emotional high of winning that game in dominant fashion against Alabama. We'll see if they can't take that same level of energy and focus on the road to Baton Rouge.
Yeah, when you look at the LSU offense, you mentioned, not a lot of success on the ground. Two ways you could look at that. One, they don't need to have success on the ground to win the game, which has been true in some cases. But you also mentioned they are having lower scoring outputs in conference. And part of that probably is because they aren't running the ball effectively. So if one thing we know about this Oklahoma defense, they'll travel, it's consistent, is they will stop the run really well. So I expect Oklahoma to have a lot of success there. And again, it does matter, how well that defensive secondary holds together, because the thing we typically see from Brent Venables' defense is that it's that middle zone area between, your medium zone and your deep zone. If a quarterback has enough time, he's able to find that more often than not. So that's where I get the most concern there. But again, I think it's all about, offensively, what Oklahoma is able to do and how you're able to help out your defense. Because if LSU is able to get up 10-0, I don't think Oklahoma has a chance to really get back into this. I think we definitely will come out there and try to do a lot of the same things that we did against Alabama as far as running the ball, controlling possession, and so forth. And, people will say, well, LSU will just put so many guys in the box. Well, Alabama did that too, and it didn't matter. And part of that is because Joe John Finley put together some really good schemes around running the quarterback, zone read, or what I might call a QB ISO, where you're changing angles after a fake handoff and so forth. So I think there's some really good stuff there that's going to be hard for LSU to defend, even if they do stack the box. But I think Oklahoma will try to just say, hey, can we run the ball and just do the same thing we did against Alabama? And we'll have our backup plans of, here's our passing game off of that. But I think the game plan offensively will be to try to complement the defense in that manner. And we'll see what they're able to do, because LSU's defense is not nearly as good as Alabama's at stopping the run. So you think Oklahoma can have some success there.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last thing on Garrett Nussmeier here, the two best defenses that he's played against this year, obviously Alabama and Texas A&M, threw 5 interceptions combined in both of those losses. So if Oklahoma, and we know that Zach Alley and Brent Venables, they're going to come up with a good game plan. They're going to disguise some things. They're going to have some aggressive blitz packages to try and make him uncomfortable in the pocket, because if Oklahoma is going to have some success on the defensive side of the football and try and make this a 4-quarter game where they can, be able to hand the ball back in good position for their offense, they're going to have to get after Garrett Nussmeier, make him uncomfortable, and maybe force him into a couple of turnovers. But you make a really good point in bringing up the LSU, rush defense. They're ranked 14th in the SEC in stopping the run, giving up an average of close to 150 yards per game. That's something that if I'm Joe John Finley, if I'm Jackson Arnold and Xavier Robinson, I'm looking at that after, the last 3 games that we've played right now, where we've really been able to kind of kind of find our identity on offense. And, that's, taking care of the football, play, keep away, manage the game, run the football, and, maybe try and hit some big plays in the passing game down the field. I think that's a game plan that they had against Alabama that they're going to try and go into Death Valley on Saturday night and duplicate it. And, it does come down to Jackson Arnold, because I would be hard pressed given the athletes that LSU has on defense. And again, it hasn't been the stereotypical, elite defenses like we've seen from LSU over the last 10 to 20 years, but they've still got playmakers at all three levels. So I just fail to see how Brian Kelly and, Baker, the defensive coordinator, I don't see any way that they don't put 8 to 9 guys in the box at any given time. Especially we don't know the status of Brendan Thompson right now. From what it looked like during the game, I would be shocked if he plays this week. So, Oklahoma's going to be trotting out, Zion Kearney, Jacob Jordan, JJ Hester. And I'm sorry, as good as those guys have been at moments throughout the season, if LSU's secondary is not going to fear that whatsoever. So if I'm Brian Kelly, I'm loading the box. I'm trying to take away OU's ability to run the football and try to make them one-dimensional, because from everything that we've seen this point for how limited Oklahoma's been at the playmaker position out wide, I don't trust that Oklahoma's going to be able to consistently find success through the air to be able to give them an opportunity to win this game on Saturday. So again, can we win another game without throwing the football? I don't think so. But again, I didn't think Oklahoma was going to beat Alabama, and they kicked their ass for 4 quarters. So we'll see.
I think they'll definitely put Oklahoma in a position where Jackson Arnold will have to throw to, at certain points in order to win the game. And it's kind of weird. If I told you that Jackson Arnold has not thrown an interception since the Tennessee game and he only has 3 on the year, that doesn't sound right, but that's true. Most of his turnovers have come on fumbles, but he took care of the ball really well against Alabama and was making smart decisions there. So if that continues, that gives Oklahoma a chance. You just can't be shooting yourself in the foot. There's a little bit of margin of error against Alabama with the one turnover that Tatum had. It happened so early, happened on, deep in Oklahoma territory. So, you were able to work around that, even though Alabama did score off of that. And that was their one score was off of the turnover, but they did have to drive the entire field and earn that. It's just a little bit different there. So I'm interested to see what happens. I don't know who Arnold's going to be able to throw it to. It's going to be like a couple of passes to Jacob Jordan, a few to Bauer Sharp, and you'll have to, work in some, schematic things, I think, to give yourself some advantages there on just some rhythm passes. And Oklahoma did a great job of just keeping it in 3rd and short often, so you wouldn't have to throw very often against Alabama. So if they can repeat that, they'll look pretty good there. So as far as anything else on the LSU game here, Tyler, or should we go ahead and get into best bets?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, wish I was going to be in attendance for it. I was going to be making the trip down to Baton Rouge to partake in the night game at Death Valley, but dog tore the ACL 2 hours into our honeymoon about a month ago and had surgery last week. So he is he's kind of out of commission for the next couple of weeks. He would be on the injury report if we had one for dogs this week. So going to be watching it at home, which is kind of also not a bad thing because I get to have Texas A&M on the other TV as well. So we're going to make the best of it, but it should be a fun one. We'll see if Oklahoma can carry the momentum that they've got from that dominant win over Alabama. We'll see if they can't go in there and maybe get Brian Kelly fired.
That would be wild.
Student section wants it.
Yeah, let's talk best bets here. One game separates us as we head into the final 2 weeks of the year. So it's gotten very tight. Both of us went 3-2 last week, so no separation on either side. Tyler, you have the 1 game lead. Lead us off here with your first bet.
Adam, typically over the last couple of years, we've all been above 500, but this has been by far, I don't know if we're just not seeing the board well. I don't know if the current 2024 season, it has been damn near impossible to try and predict some of these matchups, but we're going to go for it again. We'll see if we can't get this thing figured out. Coming up here just a little bit, about 25, 30 miles north of me in Boulder, Colorado, Oklahoma State, the winless Mike Gundy fighting Cowboys in the Big 12, coming up to Boulder to take on Shadur Hunter and Travis Hunter and the CU Buffs. Over-under on this matchup currently set at 65.5. Colorado coming off of a loss. They're going to score points kind of at will. I think that Oklahoma State found a little bit of something last week against Texas Tech. They were able to put up some really good numbers offensively. I like the over in this one. So if you're betting this, take the under, but I like the over 65.5.
Yeah, that feels like a good pick. But we always say that on Tuesday, and then
then it goes the other way.
Yeah. My number 1, Navy traveling to Greenville, North Carolina, take on the Pirates. I'm supporting the troops and ECU. So the troops and the Pirates in this one. over 55.5. Both these clubs like to score a lot of points. I think they'll both be successful.
Hope Navy beats their ass. There's a little, you'll get that joke. There you
I
go.
do.
All right, pick number 2 for me, the game. Michigan at Ohio State in the shoe in Columbus. This is a game that Ryan Day said in an interview that outside of the death of his father, this is the worst feeling in the world that he has ever gone through losing this game. Michigan is a shell of itself. Sharon Moore, they do not have anything offensively. I think that Ohio State, they have been looking forward to this game for 364 days. They get them at home. This Ohio State defense is nasty. They're going to limit Michigan's ability, and Ryan Day is not going to take his foot off the gas if he has a chance to. So I think that this is an Ohio State blowout. I think they cover the 20.5.
Sure feels that way. We'll see if they're maybe wound up, not too tight in order to get that result. But yeah, I think Michigan is outmatched quite a bit. My number 2, I'm supporting the troops again. UTSA traveling to Army, taking the over on 54.5. Both these teams, again, score a ton of points. So I'll take the over.
It just feels weird betting the overs on Service Academy games.
Yeah, it does. But man, they score some points this year.
They do. All right, pick number 3. I am going out to Southern California, the Fighting Irish, Notre Dame, a 7.5 point favorite going up to the Coliseum to take on Lincoln Riley and the Trojans. This feels way too easy. This feels entirely too obvious. Maybe I'm wrong here. USC, I haven't been impressed with them the last month of the season. They made the transition. They benched Miller Moss, starting a new quarterback, the transfer for UNLV. I think Notre Dame goes in there and just houses Ohio State. I think that the Irish get this thing done. They cover the 7.5 easily.
Yeah. Did you see Josh Pate's stat about USC, though?
Was it the 5 losses by combined 19 points?
It may have been that, but it was like there's only 6 teams that have led in the fourth quarter of every game this year, and one of them is USC. And I was like, that's interesting, because otherwise I'd be in total agreement with you. I'm like, maybe USC just plays one possession games like Oklahoma did in 2021. Not a good team, but a lot of those games went their way. So Oklahoma had a good record. Maybe this USC team is kind of the opposite. I'm
going to find another stat that I think Chad Smith on Twitter put it out here. You mentioned the one possession games at Oklahoma that the USC has been a part of, but I thought that he put something out there that was pretty interesting when, you talk about the all the pressure and, Brent Venables not being able to get it done through the first couple of weeks of the year. Here it is right here. Of Oklahoma's 15 losses since 2022, 8 of the 15 are by 1 score or less, 5 of those by 3 points, 1 of those by 5 points, and 2 of them by less than a touchdown. So not far off, but again, you got to figure out a way to punch last.
Yeah, absolutely. My number 3, I'm traveling up the road to Boulder with you as well. I'm going to take OSU to cover plus 10.5 in the first half, though. Malachi Smith, the new quarterback that has been under center, put up a ton of points against Texas Tech, who's not the best defense, but Colorado also had some trouble stopping the run with Devin Neal last week and Arrowhead. So Ollie Gordon, hasn't had the greatest year, but still has something in the tank from time to time. So I think that and the combination of the new quarterback there, I think Cowboys will be able to keep this game relatively close at halftime, at least.
I could not disagree with you more, but again, we'll see what happens.
That usually doesn't mean a good thing.
Yeah, no, not at all. Pick number 4 for me, going out to the Big 12, going out to Lubbock, Texas, West Virginia, going on the road to take on the Red Raiders. This is another one that makes absolutely no sense. It feels way too obvious. This feels like a guaranteed lock of the week. Texas Tech minus 3.5. West Virginia, I think Neil Brown might be on his way out the door. I think that Joey McGuire, I think the Red Raiders, they get this thing done. They win they cover the 3.5 number. Lubbock
in late November. I don't want any part of that. So I like that pick. My number 4, Washington traveling to Oregon. This is technically a rivalry game, one that we talked about earlier in the offseason. I would love to have a name for this rivalry game, but these teams and the over-under, I think the under has hit 15 times combined for the two of them throughout this season. The over has only hit 7 times combined. So I think that's a pretty safe bet for me here on the 50.5. I think Washington will really struggle to score. Oregon, I don't think that they will rest starters, but maybe they take it a little bit easy because, they're just getting to Indianapolis and going to try to win that game against Ohio State in the rematch. So they don't necessarily have to prove anything. So I do think that may lead to less scoring.
Interesting. I like the thought process there. Let me wrap this thing up. Staying in the Big 12, going down to Waco, Texas, KU coming on to take on the Baylor Bears. Adam, Kansas, I know that they're not going to be playing in the Big 12 championship game, but I think you could make an argument that Kansas is playing as good as any team in that conference right now with what they've done over the last 3 weeks, taking down 3 ranked teams. Kansas currently favored by 1.5 points. I know that Dave Aranda's announced that he's going to be back for another year, but I think Kansas goes on the road and they get this thing done. Give me Devin Neal and that Kansas Jayhawk rushing attack. I think they go down to Waco and knock off the Bears.
I was glad when I saw you pick this game because I need to make up at least a game on you to get into a tie position. And here's an opportunity for me to do that. I'll take the other side of this with the Bears plus 1.5. Kansas has been phenomenal the last 3 weeks, but I'm just betting on the odds that they're not going to be able to do it a 4th week in a row. I think that this Baylor team is really hot right now. They've won their last 5 games in a row. Sawyer Robertson is a guy that, has been rumored to potentially be entering the transfer portal, and maybe Oklahoma would be a suitor there. He's had an excellent season. And so I just think that I know Kansas is vying for bowl eligibility here, but going on the road to Baylor, I think there's kind of like just at some point the air is going to come out of the balloon a little bit for Kansas. So I'm betting on the Bears to have a good matchup here.
Before we get to our announcement regarding the show and the future of this show, game of the week, possible game of the year in college football, Texas A&M in College Station. Who are you picking? Who do you want to see win?
I want A&M to win. That's
Same.
easy. Texas, I think, would be my pick. I think they are a very good team. I think I can trust Quinn Ewers better than the quarterback situation that the Aggies will throw out there. Having that crowd behind A&M is going to be something else, though.
They're going to be juiced up, ready to go.
Yeah. Who do you got?
I'm picking Texas A&M. I think that this will be the best team, probably. Well, let me take that back. Outside of Georgia, I think that this will be the next best team that Texas will have faced this year. I'm still not a believer of Quinn Ewers. I think that his success is a byproduct of how good of a job Steve Sarkisian does in putting him in situations. And I think that you combine the crowd with the defensive line and the front seven of Texas A&M. I think that I just think that this is kind of one of those storybook things where, we haven't had this rivalry for over a decade now. Everybody's been looking forward to this since the announcement that OU and Texas were coming back to the SEC. This game is going to be played at night. It's going to be sold out, 105,000 people. I think that Texas A&M goes in there and knocks off Texas. And then you've got some pretty crazy scenarios in terms of the college football playoff of what that could potentially look at. From what we thought was going to be possibly 6 SEC teams vying for a spot in the top 12, it's going to be chaos if Texas A&M goes in there and knocks them off. So go Aggies, gig them. Please get it done. Yell leaders, do what you do. So, yeah,
whatever they do with their arms.
Hump it, Ags.
I don't know what they do there.
Get it in there, Adam.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to an announcement that we wanted to make about the main line here, and that is that next week's show after the LSU game is the last scheduled show that we have as the main line. So a little bit of context there. We've been around for 5 seasons. This is episode 210 that you're listening to right now, and kind of came to a point where we just had been playing this actually for a little while. Before the season started, that this would be our last season of regularly scheduled shows.
It's not a byproduct of the season that we.
No, it has nothing to do with the season. We had planned it long before the season started that this would be our last season. And the reason being is just kind of good developments in our family lives. Both of us are married. We weren't married when we started the show. I have a son now, so we're going to probably spend more of our Tuesday nights looking outside for bugs and playing and whatever little boys do. So we'll probably be dedicating a little bit more time to things like that going forward. And, as far as like the future of the main line, the Twitter account will live on. Probably won't tweet as much, but I'm sure we'll have lots of interesting things to post out there. Our YouTube channel, which is different than the one that you're watching this on. If you're watching on YouTube, our actual YouTube channel is linked in the show notes. That's where most of our hype videos and our fun content gets posted. If we ever come back and do anything, podcasts will be posted there. Podcasts will still live in the same feed that you get those on going forward. And who knows, like it may be something that we decide to do once a month in the future, or maybe we only do it during football season, or maybe we'll get the itch and we'll just come back and continue to do it on a regular basis. We're just kind of leaving it really open-ended. Maybe we do collaborations with other creators out there, but as far as like a regularly scheduled show and podcast, next week will be the last one that we have scheduled at this point. So before I get into like thank yous and everything, Tyler, I'll let you take the floor on that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously next week we'll have some good stories and things that we can go over. And like you said, I mean, we've been doing this for 5 years, 210 episodes, and like I said, the whole backstory of the reason why this podcast was obviously created was, I mean, Adam and I working in the ticket office, having an opportunity, to work with season ticket holders, work with donors. I can't tell you how many times on a Monday morning our season ticket holders and the fans would call in wanting to chat about, what Mike Stoops, screwed this
Fire
up,
Mike
or
Stoops.
let me talk to Bob. What's Lincoln Riley doing? And, the whole time that you're up there, representing OU and working for the athletic department, you really kind of have to sugarcoat it and paint things with a bright brush. So we just kind of wanted to use this as an opportunity to really get on here and, just kind of talk some ball, interact with the fans, and, really be able to be honest. And I think that this is something that, one, I've definitely enjoyed doing over the last 5 years, Adam. I know that you have as well. And, we've had a couple different people join us, over the last few seasons. It has made this a hell of a lot of fun. But yeah, it's definitely not ruling out the possibility of this thing coming back. But, we've got a lot of really good stuff going on right now in our personal lives, and a lot of, big developments, things that are coming down the pipeline. So yeah, it's going to be different having the Tuesday night, 6 to 8 o'clock window open up, but it's been a hell of a lot of fun. And, Chuck, appreciate the comment. I don't think that this is the end of the Mainline podcast. You're still going to be seeing this from time to time, but what is going to be exciting next week, we're going to have LSU talk. We're going to have, bowl game destination, possibly, getting a better picture of it. Maybe the offensive coordinator is hired by the time that we do this. So it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. And we appreciate you guys joining us, and one more to go.
Yeah. And there will be a lot more thank yous that come out probably next week's show over the course of, everything that's happened over the last 5 years. Not very many shows get past like 2 or 3 episodes, and we're on 210. So there's a lot of thank yous to go out for that. Probably some sentimental stuff that will come out in next week's show, but did want to make that announcement just so everyone can be ready for that, for what might be the last episode of the main line. We'll see what happens in the future, but did want to throw that out there. So let's round out this show, though, with our score predictions for the LSU game in Baton Rouge. 6 o'clock kickoff for Oklahoma. 6-5, LSU 7-4. Two teams that don't feel that similar, but yet at the end of the day, fairly similar in record, kind of similar in outlook on how the season has been a failure for both, and are hoping for a lot more out of the future of their programs. Tyler, how do you see this game playing out?
I know that what happened 3 nights ago in Norman, Oklahoma was fantastic. This fan base needed it. This program, this team needed it. It was a hell of a lot of fun to partake in that. But at the end of the day, regardless of the positive strides that have been made over the last couple of weeks, Oklahoma finding its identity on offense, running the football, dominating the line of scrimmage. There's a reason why Death Valley kind of has the aura behind it. And, it's kind of where it's the stadium where teams go to have their dreams die. And again, I don't think that Oklahoma is doing enough. They're not as well-rounded on offense right now, I think, to be able to go in there and to be able to get something like that done. I think the Oklahoma's defense is definitely going to make their fair share of plays. They're going to pressure Garrett Nussmeier. They're going to stop the LSU running game. But at the end of the day, I trust LSU's offense more than I do Oklahoma's at this stage of the game. The fact that they do have the backing of the home crowd on a senior night in Baton Rouge, I think that LSU wins this one. And what's going to be a tough, physical, competitive football game, but I like LSU 24, Oklahoma 20.
I feel very similarly. I think this LSU offense doesn't match up nearly as well against our defense as some of the other teams that we've played. So I think it will be a very tough opportunity for Zach Alley and team to really keep things manageable for your offense. That, let's face it, they played fantastic against Alabama, but they're still not a unit that's going to go out there and score 30 or 40 points in a game.
Yeah.
Of course, I would have said we wouldn't beat Alabama by 3 touchdowns, so maybe I'll be surprised about what they're able to do on the ground, and they just run roughshod over the Tigers. Love to see that, but I have one game against Alabama of evidence that is fantastic in game plan. I have 10 other games throughout the rest of the year where the game plan was not excellent, and so I do have a lot of concerns about like how effective this offense is going to be on Saturday night. So I'm in the same boat with you. I think it's a game that's close. I think Oklahoma probably has a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter, and just doesn't have enough playmaking on offense due to injuries and so forth. So I've got the Tigers 27, Oklahoma 23.
Adam, you bring up a good point there, and I know that you've been critical. You've often said that it almost feels like this coaching staff, Brent included, especially, kind of through most of the last couple of years, it almost feels like they haven't the inability to see something for what it is. And were you surprised at all today that Brent just kind of flat out came out and said, hand up accountability. I screwed up the offensive coordinator hire. It shouldn't have been Seth Luttrell. He was not the guy. I blew that. Were you surprised to see that? Because I thought that was kind of I don't want to say that it was a breath of fresh air, but it was nice to see that Brent realized, like, okay, like I made a mistake here. I made a boo-boo. It's on me to correct it and try to rectify that going into next season.
I don't know that I was surprised, but I was really encouraged to hear that, because I think there's some things where I just wonder, like, does he have the awareness? And he made comments throughout the year, and I don't want to rehash everything around the offensive coordinator position, but it was good to hear that he had awareness around that, and the urgency there that, hey, this, whatever you do going forward, not only this hire for offensive coordinator, but if you have a future opportunity to hire an offensive coordinator, an athletic staff, training staff, whatever that might be, every decision is really important, and you have to take the utmost care with everything that you do for a program like Oklahoma, because as Brent has said many times from the podium, the margin of error is so small. And he created a great margin of error against Alabama. We won by 3 touchdowns despite fumbling, despite dropping a touchdown pass, despite missing a field goal. So there was a lot of errors there, but I think Brent's overall game plan, especially, I don't know if they came into the game knowing this, but once they saw that, hey, we can run the ball really well in Alabama and we can chew clock, they said, okay, we're going to stick with that. And so some great coaching and great game planning there against Alabama.
It's good, man. I like it. Let's get out of here.
Thanks, everyone, for making us a part of your weekly routine, at least for another week. And we will see everyone hopefully after another Oklahoma win against the LSU Tigers on Saturday night. And we'll be back here next week for another episode of The Main Line.